To kick off, let me ask you what your assessment was of the hearing,
TRICOM.
the TRICOM hearing the other day. What did you take away from it, and how do you think you guys did?
Well, if you ask me, no, it was a good opportunity to present the phenomenon of fake news, or let's just say
Itaas
disinformation
nga ang ano.
from a more i- for a more from a more objective manner, no. Parang nakita natin talaga for I can remember this might be the first formal opportunity na to go head on with fake news purveyors. Yung nasabi talaga natin yung ginagawa ninyo ay fake news talaga. And I think it's going to be the start, no. We can, if we were to take it from the comments on social media, especially on the post, yung coverage ng mainstream media, no, makikita talaga natin na people are somewhat we were able to provide clarity to the issue of social media disinformation.
But sir, can I take a step back a bit lang? Can you refresh us on what the objective is of all the hearings? Kasi we've been hearing some things, like for example, the possibility of a legal framework on disinformation. I don't know if that's correct. As well, the possibility as well of a code of ethics of some sort. I suppose for social media. But can you give us a refresher on exactly what the objectives are?
Well, simply put, no, the main objective talaga nung TRICOM is to look into this phenomenon of fake news, especially in social media. Nakita naman natin in recent months, in recent years, there has been this upsurge of this surge of social media disinformation, and I think many of our colleagues, including myself, have started to really feel the need to address the phenomenon of this occurrence of social media disinformation, and hopefully take steps now to prevent this from further eroding not only individuals, the reputation of certain individuals, but more importantly, the reputational integrity of our social and political institutions.
Kong, malinaw naman na yung main objective is in aid of legislation ng TRICOM hearing. Pero magpo-propose din ba kayo ng mga legal cases against some of those na umamin na sila ay purveyor ng fake news at saka disinformation?
Sec, hindi natin pinapangunahan, no, yung chairpersons ng committee, but our understanding is we will come up with a committee report, and definitely this will be one of the steps to be considered, filing cases for those who have been found to have pushed for or circulated false information in social media. But then again, just to na hindi tayo masyadong mawala sa focus, as in aid of legislation, there are proposals that are being studied right now as to what particular course of action in terms of regulation or in terms of education may be warranted para lang ma-resolve natin at ma-address natin itong surge ng fake disinformation in social media.
Can you give us an idea kung ano yung mga proposal na yan? Kasi yun ang tinatanong mga tao eh. Kasi there's an ongoing debate nga on how much you can regulate content. Kahit sa ang platform, di ba? Ano ba yung mga nabubuo na ngayon sa isip ninyo na doables?
Miss Ami Sakoan, si Congresswoman Roman has her own proposal for oversight council, parang MTRCB na will take into consideration social media. Ako naman, we have a proposal for a national Digital Responsibility Oversight Board. So ang framework na we're working at, alam naman natin ang mga social media platforms, they have their own respective terms and conditions and also community standards. And these are actually made available to everyone as soon as you create your own social media account on such platform. Pero ang nangyayari, there has been quite of a challenge itong reporting ng mga false information, kasi minsan kailangan ng maraming steps, hindi siya ganun kadali, ka-efficient, no? At the same time, wala namang real life consequences kumbaga, the worst that could happen is your social media account will be, kumbaga, suspended or terminated. But what we're looking at, using the framework provided for in the terms and conditions of the said social media platforms, as well as the community standards that they adhere to, maybe we can look at making sure that look at the possibility of instituting also certain civil or criminal liabilities, especially when the issue does not only harm individuals, but more importantly, can result in social instability or effects that would impact the society as a whole.
The initiatives that you're mentioning, Congressman, so far it sounds like puts the burden on the user. Why is there any effort at all to try to hold the social media platforms more accountable? Because there's two ways to go about it, right? Either you hold the social media platforms more accountable and liable, or you regulate the user. Which way are you leaning?
Well, in the draft that we're preparing, no, we're not only giving the responsibility to the user. We will also institute certain responsibilities to social media platforms, especially if they fail to institute internal reporting mechanisms, verification mechanisms when certain posts are reported, and if they fail to also make sure that their users adhere to their agreed terms and conditions, as well as social community standards. So we're even in the bill putting some responsibility even on the government or other state actors, considering that ultimately government has the responsibility of promoting social media literacy or digital literacy, because in the end this is more than just what regulation can do. This is more than what regulation can do. There is a need, of course, to institute to promote digital literacy. So what we're looking at is creating that ecosystem that builds on the strength of social media. We're not saying that social media should not be made available, that it should not be promoted. But what we're looking at is responsible use of social media. They used to describe social media as a social network. Unfortunately, in recent months, in recent years, instead of connecting people, it has been weaponized as a way for sowing division. And clearly, from how we look at it, this is something that even social media platforms should have the responsibility of ensuring that social media does not become a platform for further division, but it's used really for the purpose for which it was intended, and that is creating connections and hopefully affirming connections among individuals and users.
But sir, how much authority and power should government have in terms of regulating content, not just the platforms, but the content per se? I asked that kasi, well, you've talked about an oversight council and possibly an oversight board, in a way akin to what we have with the MTRCB. And MTRCB, of course, pre-reviews a lot of the content. But at the same time, the MTRCB has also come under fire for trying to regulate political content. I remember there were some cases where the MTRCB vetoed the release of some material because it did not agree with how government was presented in some of the material. There's also that concern that baka we might head that way then. Maybe not now, pero possibly eventually.
So going from free speech to censorship.
Sir Ed, I'm with you on that, no? Definitely prior restraint or let's say restrictions on free speech shouldn't be the direction that we are taking. To be honest, that's why we're leaning towards looking as a structure, no, without going into specifics.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why we're looking into the community standards as well as terms and conditions, because we would like to believe these are the parameters for which the social media platforms are originally designed for. And those are the things, the aspects of social media that we'd want to keep. But anything beyond, anything that infringes upon, like for say, the reputation of private individuals, or let's say the integrity of our institutions, or peace and order, or national security, those are things that I think we should be able to address. Like for example, it's not wrong, no, to use social media to criticize a public official, because for me personally, that goes with the territory of public. That goes with the territory of being in politics. But then again, if that criticism is made on an unfair or let's say wrongful basis, or it's based on a fabricated basis, no, and it is directed towards a situation that it affects national security or peace and order, as in the case that was discussed during the committee hearing, I think we need to draw the line. I think we cannot allow something that can be used for far better things to be used to sow, let's say, trouble, or to sow disagreements among or violence or instability in our social and political institutions. I think that's very important.
Well, sir, don't get us wrong. We all agree on the need to fight disinformation and misinformation. But also, when you look at, for example, the revised penal code, there's an existing provision in the revised penal code penalizing false news. That's Article 154. I'm wondering where you intend to proceed beyond that. For example, maybe in how one defines what is false or fake news. Will government be going into that? Will the government be going into this is what is false, this is what is true, and this is what is liable for penalties, and this is allowed under freedom of expression? Will we get to that part po ba? That government decides kung ano ang fake news at ano ang totoo?
I think it shouldn't be up to government to define such things. No, I think it should be up to the law to define such things, and government will be left with simply the power to exact regulations and implement them. For me, for example, no, although I would leave it later to the committee to further discuss the details or examine the details, but for me, like for example, free speech, I can think of two things that we cannot dispense with: the truth and fairness. You will be free to say as you please, but for as long as it's beyond, it's not truthful and it's unfairly presented or articulated, then I think that would warrant certain restrictions in terms of the responsibility. But what is critical is that we have to take into consideration the amplification that social media provides. I understand there is a provision in the revised penal code with regards to disinformation, no, or false news,
Yes, sir.
or false
154.
information. But the thing is, when that provision in the law was presented, we didn't have this platform of being able to actually post something on Facebook or on a social media platform, and all of a sudden have 10,000 or 30,000 people like or react or comment or engage. That has to be placed in the right context. I think it's not just a matter of whether we're free to say what we want, but it's important to look into consideration, especially when the nature of what you say can have varied consequences, especially when I want to avoid that notion that people just don't feel any accountability for what they write. I think that should be corrected. Kumbaga, siguro in simple terms, sana nandun tayo sa sitwasyon na pag gumamit ka ng social media, gagamitin mo rin yung sarili mong bait kung dapat bang isulat o hindi. And when what you wrote is going to harm not just individuals but society as a whole, though, there has to be some consequences.
Alam mo,
Because-
concretely,
Congressman, speaking of fairness and harm, kasi meron din mga nag-criticize nung TRICOM hearing ninyo na, and then they weren't all Duterte supporters, merong mga civil libertarians who expressed concern na nabully daw yata yung mga vloggers. Merong ganong criticism anong masasabi niyo doon?
Well, in the course of the discussion of the committee, some people can be passionate, some people can be more empathetic with how they express themselves. But nonetheless, everybody would have their rights respected in the course of the hearings. And in any case, they can always appeal if they feel that they've been violated. In fact, there was one instance when one of the resource persons was asked if she feels like she's intimidated or harassed during the hearings, and I think that's something that they will have recourse to if they feel like they feel otherwise. But then again, personally, I have the reason to believe that they were given enough opportunity. Mahirap lang talaga i-depensa ang sarili kung alam mo nang mali naman ang ginawa mo.
But then, Kong, there was also instances when the resource persons were not allowed to finish their answers, right? There was a little bit of badgering going on. And we have to take a step back and recall that these resource persons were invited as resource persons. So what would you say to the criticism that this wasn't really meant to be an objective hearing, but that you guys were out to settle a score? In particular, with you, kasi alam ko si Grisette Laureta Chu has been criticizing you quite publicly as well, right? And so you finally had your...
To be honest, if I were to focus on how much she had criticized me in the past, baka I don't know, it would have been worse, no? Pero I made sure that of course I have to be reminded that I was there representing my constituency. I'm there not on my own personal on my personal role, no. But of course, as I mentioned during the hearing, my main principle is that when it's a personal criticism, you can't complain about it. I've been saying that people in politics, we don't have the right to be offended, no matter how unfair, no matter how heated the criticism may be. But in the course of the discussion in the committee, sometimes there's an effort for the resource person to shift the discussion, to shift the narrative to their advantage. And that's what we've been, because we know these are people who do this very, very often. We know that there's always this tendency for them to hijack, so to speak, the course or the flow of the discussion. That's why we had to be very intentful. Once they've answered already and provided the response, we have to be quick to redirect. Because otherwise, if we leave them to speak, they would have to address issues that are not germane or not necessarily part of the course of the discussion during the committee hearing, during that part of the committee hearing.
Kung halimbawa, yung resulta, yung output naman, no, aside from the process, ano bang tingin nyo dun sa naging output? Halimbawa, some of the resource persons admitted while crying na sila nga ay naging purveyors ng fake news, no? Sayang wala din yung pulis na nagsabi na siya ay galit na galit, no, sa presidente at nag-hint siya na marami yung mag-resign. Pero anong tingin nyo dun sa output na ito? Kayo ba ay masaya? Paano yung mga hindi dumalo doon sa inyong pinatawag? May gagawin pa ba kayo para sila ay i-contempt o kasuhan, no?
Alam mo, Sek, kung I'll be honest, no, I'll be honest with you. Kung makikita mo kabuuan ng issue ng fake news, I don't think there's any reason for you to be happy, ano? Nakikita mo yung lalim na, especially yung narinig ko na walang pakialam, they don't feel any accountability kasi from our own experience, nakikita mo naman how these influencers in a way are really able to shape behavior and thinking sa ating mga kababayan. And for people for them to say that they do not feel any accountability, sa totoo lang parang they were preying on the gullible. That's how I look at it, eh. Parang ginamit nila yung taong bayan, yung kakulangan siguro sa kaalaman, sa kakulangan siguro ng karanasan, no? Para magawa yung gusto yung layunin na gusto nilang makamit. And I think during the hearing, that is the thing that we were able to really present. We were really able to expose in a way that, you know, this social media influencers have their own agenda. They are not as benign. They are not as objective as they present themselves to be. And to a point, they are not as fair and truthful as they portray themselves to be.
Pero minsan, Kong, may...
Imbak na yun.
Yeah. Minsan, Kong, may thin line eh. Halimbawa, pag sinabi niyong you have to be objective or purveyor ng fake news. Iba kasi yung, halimbawa, sinabi mo na mass resignation ng mga pulis. Iba yon. Dun sa, halimbawa, sabihin ko, these politicians are idiots. No? Yun, parang ganun eh. Yun yung concern minsan ng mga tao. Yung isa ay value judgment, yung isa ay talagang mali talaga, no?
And the question is, who gets to be the arbiter of that, of truth?
Okay. Una, doon muna ako sa tanong ni Sec Ed, no? Yung sinasabi niya na sang-ayon ako sa iyo, Sec Ed. Pag ang atake ay personal sa politiko, the people will be the better judge. This is not the only way by which we are judged. We're also judged by our performance, our output. So challenge na lang yun sa amin. How do we present also our side of the story? Now, I've been consistent. I draw the line when it's a matter, like for example, as exactly described, no? Yung situation that affects national security, a situation that can cause political instability. That is something that we have to consider. That is something that should be addressed. Now, who should be the arbiter of this is definitely yung truth itself. I don't think truth would need any other judge, no, or arbiter other than the fact that it is really what happened. And I think the objectivity of that should be the final arbiter. Ganito naman kasi yon, ma'am, for me. Pwede naman talagang magkamali ang tao sa issue. Pwede naman nagkamali siya sa nasulat niya. But the willingness to take accountability is very important. And the willingness to correct oneself is very important. And also, different, not telling, being able to say something wrong, o, di ba? Having a mistaken information is different from a lie. A lie kasi is knowing it to be wrong, yet persisting, being persistent in presenting it as truthful.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And that is,
Sir.
for me, something we need to consider.
Sir, super duper last question, sir. Sorry, pero pabol lang. The criticism that isang grupo lamang ang inyong in-invite itong mga pro-Duterte
sabi ni
vloggers,
Ami.
bakit daw hindi? For example, yung mga inakusang nagpapakalat ng fake news before na, for example, may Italiano gold daw o wala raw ill-gotten wealth ang pamilya Marcos and all that. So may ganun pong criticism na isang grupo lamang ang na-target.
To be honest, this information has been there since social media has been mainstream, no. At I don't think I agree with you. I don't think we should take into consideration sino or ano yung content for as long it's wrongful, for as long it's a lie, for as long as it's untruthful and unfair. I think we should address that.
Okay.
Whatever the political leanings are.
Okay.
But why we are focused on this particular side? Because I've never seen such concerted effort. Even the content, even the arguments, even the materials that they use, they all seem to come from one source. And for me, that is something that we really need to look into because this is more than random. This is hindi ako naniniwala na they post simply because Facebook says in the message box what's in your mind. Clearly there is an agenda and clearly weaponized in social media, and that is the thing we need to look into.
Okay. We'll leave that there for now. We thank you so much for your time today. That
Salamat,
was
sir.
House Assistant Majority Leader, Congressman Jude Acidre.
Salamat, Kong.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.